everybody, and welcome to the show. You're watching your top human rights organization review, and I am your host, Bryce Dolan. Today we're going to look at 5 different top human rights organizations, and we'll look at an article from each one of these organizations. First, we'll begin with Amnesty International, as continued fighting in South Sudan has the potential to derail the hybrid court. Next, Human Rights Foundation calls on the country of Burundi to let independent UN experts into the country. Then, Human Rights Watch calls for a war crime for the actions of a Saudi-led attack on a ceremony. Next, UN Watch condemns the Palestine Liberation Organization's, the PLO's, resolution denying Jewish and Christian ties to Jerusalem. Then we'll end the show with Norwegian Refugee Council, the NRC, on a positive note as a passionate refugee defender becomes a newly appointed UN chief. To start the show, fighting in South Sudan continues and has the possibility to derail justice for crimes committed during the conflict that began in December 2013, said Amnesty International and the International Federation of Human Rights in a joint briefing. The organizations are calling on the African Union Commission, the AU, and the South Sudan government to urgently establish the proposed hybrid court for South Sudan, otherwise known as the HCSS. Thousands have been killed, women raped, entire villages destroyed, and humanitarian personnel attacked. But as world attention has focused on ending the fight, accountability for violations that could amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity has been put on the back burner, said Amnesty International's Africa Director for Research and Advocacy. Justice must not be delayed any further. Fresh violations should give added impetus to efforts to form the hybrid court. Now, the peace agreement signed by both parties in August 2015 provides for the formation of the court to investigate and prosecute those bearing criminal responsibility for the atrocities, but little progress has been made towards setting it up. Now, the hybrid court, which will combine elements of both domestic and international law and be composed of personnel from South Sudan and abroad, currently represents the most viable option for ensuring accountability for crimes committed during the conflict, as well as for deterring further abuses. In the briefing, the organizations make 17 recommendations to ensure that the court effectively achieves accountability in accordance with international fair trial standards. Now, some of the priorities include establishing an investigative branch to ensure evidence is collected and preserved in an appropriate manner. Second, establishing an independent victim and witness protection unit. And third, ensuring that victims' rights to participate in the proceedings are guaranteed. The inclusion of South Sudanese judges and staff on the court, and exclusion of the death penalty as a possible sentence. Atrocities endured by civilians in South Sudan, which the African Union has documented, must not go unpunished. The establishment of the hybrid court is necessary, not only to address human rights violations and abuses and crimes under international law, but also as a pillar to achieving sustainable peace, said Arnold Sunga, FIDH Vice President. The AU should build on its experience of the recent trial of former Chadian President Hissène Habré in Senegal to set up the hybrid court for South Sudan. So, one of the only viable options to bring justice to these crimes in South Sudan and to help prevent future war crimes and humanitarian rights violations in the future. So hopefully they can get this hybrid court up and going as soon as possible. But next, we're moving on to Human Rights Foundation, as they call on Burundi to let UN experts into the country. Now, Human Rights Foundation strongly condemns the decision taken by the Burundian government to ban 3 UN independent experts from entering the country. According to a letter sent by the Foreign Affairs Minister, the 3 members of the UN Independent Investigation on Burundi, Christophe Haynes, Maya Salih Fidel, and Pablo de Graef, are no longer welcome in the country. The decision comes weeks after the group of experts published a detailed report exposing gross, widespread, and systematic human rights violations perpetuated by the government of Pierre Nkurunziza against its opponents. Now, Burundi has suffered 18 months of continuous unrest since Nkurunziza announced he would pursue a 3rd term in office. Democratic governments typically respond to reports exposing cases of torture, sexual violence, illegal detentions and forced disappearances, extrajudicial executions, and mass graves by offering a thorough explanation and vowing to hold accountable the perpetrators of these heinous crimes. Dictatorships, however, respond by trying to silence, ban, or discredit the messenger, said Human Rights Foundation President Thor Halvorsen. We applaud the valuable work performed by the UNIIB and call on the government to grant them unrestrained access to the country so they can continue to monitor the dire human rights situation there. Nkurunziza's regime must immediately stop its gross abuses against Burundians and bring the perpetrators to justice, said Halvorsen. Now, the UNIIB, that is the UN Independent Investigation on Burundi, the 3 investigators who were banned from the country. Now, next, moving on to Human Rights Watch, as they call for a war crime on a Saudi-led attack on a funeral service in Yemen's capital, Sana'a, on October 8th. Now, the attack killed at least 100 people and wounded more than 500, including children. While military personnel and civilian officials involved in the war effort were attending the ceremony, the clear presence of several hundred civilians strongly suggests that the attack was unlawfully disproportionate. The funeral strike underscores the urgent need for credible international investigations into alleged laws of war violations in Yemen, Human Rights Watch said. The United States, United Kingdom, and other governments should immediately suspend arms sales to Saudi Arabia. The coalition should urgently allow commercial flights to Sana'a, suspended in August, to allow anyone who is sick or wounded to seek medical treatment abroad. After unlawfully attacking schools, markets, hospitals, weddings, and homes over the last 19 months, the Saudi-led coalition has now added a funeral to its ever-increasing list of abuses, said Sarah Leah Whitson, Middle East and North Africa Director. An independent international investigation of this atrocity is needed, as the coalition has shown in its unwillingness to uphold its legal obligations to credibly investigate. Now, on October 8th, several hundred people had gathered in the Al Salah Al Kubra Community Hall, which has a capacity over 1,000, for the funeral ceremony of Ali al-Rawishan, the father of the Sana'a-based administration's interior minister, Jalal al-Rawishan. Now, all the witnesses who spoke to Human Rights Watch said that at about 3:30 p.m., at least 2 airdropped munitions penetrated the roof of the hall and detonated a few minutes apart. Photos and videos taken after the attack had showed charred and mutilated bodies strewn in and outside the hall, the building destroyed, and rescuers carrying out bodies to the ambulances. A spokesman for the Sana'a-based health ministry, Dr. Tayman al-Shami, told Human Rights Watch on October 9th that at least 110 people had been killed and 610 wounded, but that the death toll was likely to rise because a number of bodies had been burned or mutilated beyond recognition. Human Rights Watch was unable to independently verify the ministry's figures, but soon after the attack, Doctors Without Borders reported that 6 of its hospitals had treated over 400 wounded. Now, Human Rights Watch identified the munition used as a U.S.-manufactured airdropped GBU-12 Paveway 2 500-pound laser-guided bomb. The identification was based on a review of photos and footage of an intact guidance fin assembly with legible manufacturer's markings and other weapon remnants. Now, to call more attention to this story, we'll start the hashtag Saudi Funeral War Crime. Now, on this issue, I'm in between, ladies and gentlemen, because yes, this was a war crime, but how did they get a hold of U.S. manufactured weapons? Now, we're going to move on, because we're going to run out of time if we try to debunk that. Now, to continue, UN Watch is against UNESCO's historical revision after the agency's 58-member executive board adopted an inflammatory and one-sided Palestinian-drafted resolution submitted by the Islamic States, which erases Jewish and Christian ties to Jerusalem and casts doubts on the connection between Judaism and the ancient city's Temple Mount and Western Wall. The vote was 24 in favor, including Iran and Sudan, 6 against, including USA, UK, Germany, and the Netherlands, 26 abstaining, and 2 absent. At the same time, UN Watch said the inflammatory text's failure to obtain a majority was a moral victory. The amount of countries abstaining increased by 7 from the 17 who supported a similar text in April, with France, India, Argentina, Spain, Sweden, Sri Lanka, Guinea, and Togo shifting their votes from yes to abstain. The resolution was drafted by the Palestinians but officially submitted by Sudan's genocidal regime together with human rights abusers Algeria, Egypt, Lebanon, Morocco, Oman, and Qatar. Notable features of the text are listed at the bottom of the article on the UN Watch website. Now, to end the show on a positive note, a passionate defender of refugees becomes a new UN chief. We congratulate Antonio Guterres, new UN Security General. He is a passionate defender of refugees at a time when it is sorely needed, said the Norwegian Refugee Council's Secretary General Jan Egeland. Now, Thursday, October 13th, former chief of the UN Refugee Agency, the UNHCR, Antonio Guterres, was elected UN Security General by the UN General Assembly. Guterres was nominated to the position by a Unison Security Council last week. The Norwegian Refugee Council, the NRC, congratulates Guterres and urges him to continue his tireless work for refugees' rights. A true humanitarian champion and defender of refugees is a new UN Secretary General. Congratulations, Antonio Guterres. Good luck in a world of crisis, said Jan Egeland in a tweet. Now, Guterres is not taking on an easy task. In a time where more than 65 million people are displaced worldwide and conflicts cause tremendous suffering, the world needs a strong UN leader. He is mandated to seek political solutions while at the same time provide life-saving assistance to crises and conflicts worldwide. The UN was created in 1945 with the aim to prevent new wars and solve the enormous challenges facing millions of displaced people. In recent decades, the number of wars between countries has decreased, while the number of internal conflicts is increasing and the number of displaced people has reached its highest level since the aftermath of the Second World War. Civilians are routinely attacked in too many brutal armed conflicts, which, along with climate change, force millions of people to leave their homes every year. This extremely challenging situation places great demands on the UN, and Guterres' success will in the end depend on the willingness of world leaders to accept his leadership and pull in the same direction, said Jan Egeland. Now, we want to congratulate too to Antonio Guterres in his new position at the UN as Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to find any of these articles and look into them in more detail, into more of their findings, you can find all these articles on the websites of these top human rights organizations. You can find the link to all these articles directly to these articles below in the description on our YouTube channel. And while you're looking at those, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss our shows that come out every day. We post a new one every day, whether it's on top think tanks or on top human rights organizations. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, give us a like on Facebook, or follow us on Twitter. But this does it for the show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. This was your top human rights organization review, and I was your host, Bryce Dolan.